We've been talking about prophecy. One of the things that we mentioned at the beginning was to define what prophecy was. We wanted to make sure that we understood, had a clear meaning of what prophecy was and what it was not. We know that there are Gentile prophets, there are female prophets and male prophets. So they are a wide variety. We expressed and understood the reason why that non-Jewish prophets were brought about, and the purpose of bringing the non-Jewish prophets was for the nations not to have the excuse, well, you didn't give us a prophet to guide us or to lead us. And in reality, God gave everybody sort of a playing field that's leveled out. Now, unfortunately, there are those within the non-Jewish world and what I would say the non-Jewish religious world, whatever religion that would be, who plays up their own prophecies. If you go to India, there are supposed to be great gurus in India that play up their whole prophetic ability. And most of it is just what they call mentalism. Are you guys familiar with mentalism? What mentalism is? It's the use of psychology and the ideas of sociology to make determinations of people and mind control, manipulation. In many aspects, it's just plain witchcraft. Anytime that one human being controls another through whatever means necessary, that's considered witchcraft. And some of that has been deemed as prophetic in nature. What we said that biblical prophecy, or the person who is a prophet from a biblical standpoint, is one who has gotten very close to the Creator. I mean, this person is one who has developed a tremendous closeness to God and a tremendous holiness to God. This person is not someone who merely grasps at things that he suspects, but it is God actually speaking to him through another entity or through an angel. We talked about how prophecy, that man's physical nature acts as a barrier to prophecy. The reason why most of us cannot experience prophecy to the level of what a prophet would, because of our physical barriers. There are just things within our life that keeps us from being able to see it. It's almost like having a radio that tunes to a certain frequency. You could have all the same electronic components in a radio that you have in another radio, except one difference, and that is one radio is able to tune to a certain megahertz and the other isn't. And if you're not capable of tuning into, it can look the same, but it cannot function the same. Same with those who are prophets. Many prophets are very humble people, and these are very unassuming people. Most of the prophets never really wanted to be a prophet, except for the case probably of Elijah, because Elijah picks Elisha as one of his students, and we see that Elisha is going through some level of training. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Let's go to number 6, or paragraph 6 on page 217. God reveals himself and bestows his influence. A prophet is greatly overwhelmed. His body and all of his limbs immediately begin to tremble, and he feels as if he's being turned inside out. The first thing that we're going to learn about a prophet when he's receiving this huge download, it is a physically overwhelming thing. Why? Because the presence of God, the purity of God's presence, as it's coming through, the human body is not capable of taking that level of purity of God's holiness. That's why it says that usually, and we'll read this in another paragraph later on, that most prophets, they're not receiving it straight from God. They're receiving it through an emissary. They're receiving it through an angel. And that angel sort of filters out the glory of God. At some level, that angel produces the image and the presence and the glory of God in such a way that the human can actually understand it without it destroying them or tearing them apart. Now, there is one who would receive prophetic messages from God without trembling and falling out and passing out, and that was Moshe Rabbeinu, correct? It says that This, however, is the nature of the physical. It cannot tolerate the revelation of the spiritual. And this is particularly true when it consists of the revelation of God's own glory. The prophet's senses cease to operate, and his mental faculties can no longer function independently. They have all become dependent on God and the influx that is being bestowed. So basically, when a guy is having a prophetic moment in which God is speaking to him, it completely overtakes him. It completely overtakes him. In many cases, that person sees into another dimension. They are capable of seeing things that the average person has not been able to see. It is an overwhelming experience. I know that many people in this modern age that have touted themselves as being great prophets remind me of modern day mentalists. And if you want to know what a mentalist is, just go on YouTube and type in mentalist, and you'll see there's a dime a dozen, and they all have the same sort of thing. They'll look at the crowd and they'll pick somebody out and they'll say, I sense somebody over here has a back pain about right here, and everybody's like, yeah, I've got a back pain, because most Americans have back pain. And he calls out something and emotionally manipulates the individual into some type of a religious fervor, all the while calling himself a prophet. But a real prophet, his experience is overwhelming, and those people around him know what's going on. Since it is a physical influx, as we said, completely overcomes the prophet's physical being. Prophecy can be an overwhelming, even terrifying experience. Regarding Abraham, the Torah states Abraham fell into a trance, and a great dark dread fell upon him. Now, I've read that text many times and wondered, what in the world was he seeing? Was he seeing the future of his children, of Israel? What dark dread fell of him? It seems that he was able to peer into the other side of the other dimension that is just next to us in physicality, found in Genesis 15:12. In describing his vision, Daniel likewise said, I saw this great vision and I became powerless, completely paralyzed by the vision. My appearance was destroyed, and my strength deserted me. I heard the sound of his words, and I fell on the ground in a trance. Daniel 10:8-9. If you'll remember when God spoke from Sinai and Israel was around the mountain, what is it that they saw? Is it possible that they were seeing like a prophetic vision? They could hear the voice of God thundering, and it scared them to death. The ground vibrated with the words of the Torah, and they were like, no, no, no. Moses, you speak, because these voices, God, these words will kill us. We can't hear them. Prophets often describe their vision in terms of whirlwinds, clouds, fire, wheels within wheels, flames, different types of animals and creatures. These denote the mental state through which the prophet must pass before he can obtain a vision. I've used this illustration on many different occasions, but it's only the only physical illustration that I can almost picture, and I've seen that would sort of give us an indication what we're talking about. Whenever a prophet is passing through the physicality into this other dimension to see whatever Hashem is going to give him, there is a disturbance in physicality. I'll see if you can follow me. If you have questions, stop me, okay? Because I know this might sound a little over. The illustration I give is the one that I talk about in Mexico. There are caves that they'll dive into, that once they get in the water, it's fresh water, but it actually connects to the ocean. And somewhere in the middle of the cave, mile or so in, the salt water and fresh water comes together. When they come together, they don't mix. It's really interesting phenomenon. And so they might have 2 feet, 3 feet of sort of this murky water that is between the fresh water and the salt water. And this murky level, you can't see anything in it. It's just this blurry phase of dusty looking water, but it's not dusty. It's just murky water. It's where the salt water and the fresh water come together. And so as a diver goes through it, he he's going from one beautiful, clear set of water into this phased out level, into another level of water, which is salt. So in some aspects, a prophet, when he's passing from physicality, he's mentally or spiritually tapping into this other dimension. He's going through whirlwinds and clouds and fire. That's what he's perceiving and what he's sensing. A prophet's vision can only be obtained when one is in a perfect mental state. It cannot be attained when one is depressed, languishing, angry, in confusion. Before attaining a vision, a prophet must therefore be a pleasant, joyous mood. Joy in serving God is conducive to the prophetic influx. It is for this reason that the prophets often made use of music in attaining visions. Even with every possible preparation and meditation, no prophet has enough control over his spiritual being to have the vision at will. Still, God has to come in when it's God's time to do what He needs to do. Although a prophet may be in the state of readiness, a vision can only come when granted by the Creator. However, even when a prophet is not granted a vision, under such circumstances he is granted an experience of divine touch. The revelation of Moshe Rabbeinu was not prophecy, but a total different, higher spiritual experience. Therefore, the limitations of other prophets do not apply to him. Now, we're going to go to the next paragraph on 6. It says, as a result of this attainment of the soul, neshama, it gains a degree of enlightenment completely beyond the powers of human reasoning. This enlightenment does not come to it because of its own nature, but as a consequence of the fact that the highest root is bound in it. The soul, therefore, perceives things in a much higher manner than it could ever attain by itself. One who has attained this level of prophecy is on a higher level than one who attains the level of divine inspiration. Even with the respect of his grasp to knowledge, this is so because prophecy brings man the greatest degree of enlightenment that is possible for him. Because he's attained prophecy, he has attained the highest possible level of attachment to God himself. So a prophet cannot be a schlep. He cannot be somebody who's not spiritually well-rounded in every aspect of his life. The revelation of God's glory is what gives rise to all that is contained in a prophetic experience. Revelation working upon the power of imagination of the prophet's soul, the nefesh, leading to images of concepts forced upon it by the power of revelation. The imagination, however, does not initiate anything on its own. What does this mean? The prophet doesn't superimpose something that's going on. He waits until the revelation is completely given. When we have a dream and we try to wake up the next morning and remember the dream, and we're sitting there going, well, I remember this, this, and this, and in the dream I was wearing a green shirt, and the green shirt meant, you're trying to figure out what the dream meant, right? Is that prophecy? No, that's not prophecy. Why do we know that's not prophecy? Because if you had a prophetic experience, you'd get up and know. Right? You're not having to guess through the whole thing and maybe it means this or that. A prophet doesn't get up and superimpose his imagination on things that he saw. He just merely states what he saw. I mean, I'm thinking of many of the things the prophets spoke of were so mysterious that even in this modern day, it's hard for us to understand what they were actually seeing. So this idea of prophecy in general, there are many degrees. However, as we discuss presently, the highest level of all is that of Moshe Rabbeinu, regarding whom the Torah testified in Devarim 34:10. There will never again arise a prophet in Israel like Moshe, who knew God face to face. Now we're going to go into the next paragraph on page 221, the prophetic experience. The prophetic experience. When a person attains prophecy at the highest level, everything reaching him during the prophetic experience is perceived, undistorted, and fully understood. This is a far cry from what in a modern age that we see quote unquote people with prophetic abilities have. You know, they're like, oh, they're feeling things and they're writing, they're waiting, you know, they're kind of divining stuff. That's not a prophet. A prophet knows exactly what's happening. He speaks it and he says it. This is, even though at first he will have imaginations as outlined in a previous chapter, he afterwards will have a prophetic thought which is much more clear, which he understands completely, and these make it evident to him that he attained the level of prophecy. When you see someone who claims to be a prophet in the modern era that gets on TV and declares possibilities and innuendos, that's not a prophet. That's a soothsayer, or that's a prognosticator. What's another word for him? A predictor. That's what those people are. That is, being that his prophetic experience binds him to God, and it is God himself who has revealed to him and acted upon him, he realizes that the images he perceived were visions of prophecy resulting from divine influence. Knowledge of the subject matter contained in the revelation is permanently fixed in his mind through this influence, and it remains with him without any doubt. The prophet then feels no uncertainty about his being a prophet, about any aspect of his prophecy, or about its origin or result. Any questions about this so far? Any comments? None?
So sometimes, like people who reach a promise and communists and terrorists and all that stuff, do they think they're prophets?
I would think that some of them probably would consider themselves prophets, but they're not prophets. That's witchcraft.
Or false prophets.
Right. That's witchcraft, or, you know, whatever you call it, trickery. That's all it is to it. One must also realize that a prophet does not attain this highest level all at once. He must elevate himself step by step. How does that elevation begin step by step? By attending some level of mentorship. Samuel was the example we gave the other day. He was a young boy that was brought into the temple. A mother dedicated him to the temple, Hannah. She dedicated him to God, and there he lived in the temple. And when God first spoke to him, it was in such a complete physical form, he had no idea what it was. Generally, prophecy comes upon a prophet before he realizes that it's prophecy. He just didn't know. It just happened. Moshe Rabbeinu is one example where he walked up to a burning bush. He didn't walk by us and say, oh, burning bush, I'm a prophet. He walked past the burning bush and like, what is this? And then God speaks to him and he hears it. With surety, he has a discussion with God, and also with surety, he didn't really want to do the job. He didn't feel like he was capable of doing it. So prophecy requires some level of apprenticeship. Just in the case of other disciples and crafts, where one must advance by step until he masters them thoroughly. This explains what the scripture means when it speaks of the sons of the prophets. These were the ones who apprenticed themselves to recognize prophets in order to learn the necessary ways of prophecy. It is possible that a revelation from God begins in such a way that the recipient may not experience, being an experienced prophet, is not even aware of the prophecy. This is what we're talking about. In which he hears an audible voice, an angel appears to him, but he thinks the angel is a man, or she thinks angel is a man. It is only afterward that he understands that this is prophecy. This is what happened when God first called on Prophet Samuel. We talked about that. 3 times he went to ask for advice and asked his caretaker if he had called him, and he told him no, he hadn't. So he said to call out and say, here I am, and he does. And of course, this is his first experience. It says, afterward, however, when the prophetic influences poured upon Samuel in full, he realized that this voice that he heard was all the matter of prophecy. The same is true with Moshe. When he saw the burning bush, at first it was only revealed to him as if it was something that he was experiencing in the physical sense. He saw the burning bush, and God called him using his father's voice. Only when prophetic influx flowed upon him did he realize the true nature of the vision. It says in paragraph 4, it says, those who train themselves for prophecy must do so through a number of specific disciplines. Now let's go through some of these. The purpose of these is to bring the highest influence to bear on them to nullify the effects of their physical nature, holding it back. In this manner, they attach themselves to God and bring on themselves revelation of His light. These disciplines can include various meditations, pronouncing certain holy names, or the many 72 names of God, praising God with prayers, intermingled with His names, combined in a very specific manner, as discussed earlier. By and large, this is pretty much lost in our culture today. I don't even know that if in Judaism they know the specifics on it. The main initiation of prophecy, however, depends on these neophytes' devotion to God to the degree that they make themselves worthy through their deeds and continually purify themselves through the above-mentioned disciplines. They can bring themselves closer to God, closer and closer to God. The prophetic influences begins to come to them, and they undergo one experience after another. So a prophet is one who, over a long period of time, develops and attunes themselves to hearing the voice of God. This is a person that generally is not very, what's the word for it? Not very tied up in society, who's pretty much a loner. They're to themselves. They're not sort of buried by materialism of the world. That's not even a concern to them. Their only concern is their connection with God. Through this process, they generally have a master prophet that guides them. In Moshe Rabbeinu's case, he didn't have a master prophet, but we can go to several different prophets who had masters that guided them on the way. On the basis of what is revealed to them, he instructs them and informs them what is still lacking in their quest until they attain full prophecy. They require a master of all this. Even though some influence and revelation may have started to come to them, this is in itself not enough to immediately bring them to the ultimate goal. I think that is one of the reasons why that Elijah and Elisha's relationship is so well recorded. You see them traveling together. You see Elijah selecting Elisha. Elisha accompanying him on many different miracles that take place. So there is a mentoring that is going on in preparing Elisha for that ministry. Even after it was fully attained, prophecy still has different levels and degrees, both quantitatively, and some prophets may prophesy many times, while others may only do it one time in their entire life. So if a prophet does it once, they're still a prophet. In one respect, interesting note here, however, all prophets are the same. They all are completely aware of their attachment to God. The revelation that they experience is unambiguously recognized as coming from God. Without any doubt at all, it is only in a degree of attachment, revelation, enlightenment that differences exist. Let's continue on. Part of a prophet's career may include being sent to a mission from God. So think of a prophet whose mission was from God. Think of just one right now. Pops in your head, just random. Say again. Who? Elijah. Who else? Moses. Jonah. Who?
JC.
They're prophets that are sent on a mission very specifically. Some prophets were sent to non-Jewish people like Jonah. We have prophets that are sent for a very specific reason. In every case, it was to bring people back to repentance. Part of a prophet's career may include being sent on a mission from God. This is in itself, however, not the essence of prophecy, since it is by no means necessary that a prophet be given a message for someone else, As we have already explained, the intrinsic nature of prophecy is to be attached to God and experience His revelation. This in turn may be accomplished by information and enlightenment. It is sometimes possible, however, that a prophet should be sent with a message to others. He may be a recognized prophet who is well versed and totally knowledgeable in the ways of prophecy. Nevertheless, one who is not so well versed and knowledgeable may also be given such a task.
How does he get over?
How does he get the job? God tells him to do it. And it's like very clear God speaks to him. And prophecy doesn't come by some guy knocking you on the shoulder and saying, it's time for you to go do a mission for God. It's God that's going to speak to you. And in this case, all the prophets that we see have the same issue. This is what happened in the case of Yarvim's prophet. It says he was punished for not abiding with his own prophecy. As explained by our sages, the reason for this is that he was not sufficiently careful in the ways of prophecy. So obviously he wasn't schooled, and he pretty much blew it. The next example was Nineveh, in which the prophet didn't really want to commit himself to the job. And the reason why Jonah didn't want to commit himself to the job is he was concerned that the indictment that the people of God would have to go through, because here he preached to these non-Jewish people in Nineveh, and they did tshuva, they repented. And what is going to happen when the Jewish people stand in judgment before God and didn't repent? It's like the huge indictment. He didn't want to do it. Nevertheless, he did do it. Let's see. Let me see. We got to look at the reference there. Yaravam's prophet. We'll have to take a look at and see. Huh? Yeah. Go check the Google Rebbe. There's another issue here. Is this negotiation that was going on between Jonah and God? It says if the phrase had only included the idea of punishment, then when God changed the decree and annulled the punishment, He would have revealed this fact to some prophet. The fact that a new decree had been issued would have been revealed to the prophets who were alive at the time, especially to Jonah himself, since God had included both meanings in the phrase. However, it is not necessary to issue a new decree, but merely to fulfill the original decree according to the second meaning. Jonah, however, did not realize that this phrase had more than one interpretation and thought it only as a prediction. So he figured that when he told them that God was going to destroy them, that it was going to happen. And in reality, we know that no negative prophecy has to come about. If it's positive prophecy, it'll happen. But if it's negative, it doesn't necessarily mean that, because if somebody changes their ways, then that prophecy can change in itself. Let's go to number 8 here. It says, it is necessary to realize that there are two distinct aspects of prophecy, namely its content and its wording. A prophetic concept may not be circumscribed by words. In such a case, the prophet will express it in ways that in any way he wishes. Some prophets, however, perceive a concept that is also circumscribed by words. Here are some examples of that. We think of Hosea. Here's a prophecy that came to him that he didn't express in words. What did he do? Hosea married a prostitute. And he had a lot of children. And she was not faithful to him. So without words, he was pretty much telling the Jewish nation that this is how the Creator feels toward you. He has betrothed you at Sinai, and now you are selling yourself and turning away from him. It's an incredible lesson. There was another one where a prophet laid on his side for so many months and urinated through a hole in the wall of the city. No word spoken. So, of course, if you did that today, you'd probably be hauled off to Ben Tab for a mental evaluation, right? But he had a point to the whole message. And so we'll move right along with that one. Do what? We'll get into that a little bit later on. How about the ones, Yermahu, who thus was instructed to wear a linen belt. In another instance, to place a yoke around his neck. The prophet Ezekiel was similarly told to trace a map of Jerusalem on a brick. In case such as these, the act was used to stimulate the highest forces in a manner required by nature in a particular prophetic concept. It is also necessary to realize that the only one who deserves the actual title of a prophet is one who has attained full prophecy. This is an individual who is certain that his prophecy is from God, as discussed earlier. When he reaches this level, there is neither ambiguity nor error in his prophecy. So a prophet that gets up and declares something that doesn't happen, he ain't a prophet, right? In more general sense, however, the title of prophet is also given to one who has the beginnings of prophetic experiences and has attained some degree of revelation in a matter beyond the realm of normal human experience. Such an individual, however, may not perceive the concept of never mind, we'll pass on. No, it's a whole different level. And many, therefore, be misled. This is what happened in the case of King Ahab's prophets, as will be discussed here just shortly. Those who know the ways of the prophet fully, however, are also completely aware of these stumbling blocks. They recognize their signs and know how one must protect himself from them until he attains true prophecy. This is an experienced prophets. These experienced prophets teach these things to their disciples. To discuss earlier, one of the most important tasks of their master's prophets is to bring their disciples to the truth and to prevent them from being misled. I'm going to close with this concept and idea, and that is prophets often, when they're brought up, true prophets are often brought up. There is generally a school of prophets, or people declare themselves prophets that work for kings and the governments that would often denounce the other prophets and declare them to be the false prophets. That happened on a regular basis. And I think needing to go in and sort of study what that really meant should be that they declared themselves as prophets, but they were not really prophets because they had not been with such surety been declared a prophet by the people. And so there are plenty of examples of that. And we'll continue on. We'll pick up on page 231, paragraph 10 next week, next Thursday.